Excellent. Oh, welcome everyone. So happy to see all these faces. Oh, I'm getting so excited for the annual gathering now, just seeing everyone popping in here. This is exciting. Welcome, welcome, welcome. More people coming. Ah, great. Well, I hope you're having a great Sunday afternoon wherever you are. For those of you I've know well and not seen in a while, nice to see you all again. For those I haven't met yet, I look forward to seeing you in person. This is really wonderful. So, welcome. I'll give folks a minute to filter in so we're not going too far ahead of people. And um, we're hoping this will answer any questions you have and get you excited for sharing your stuff and continuing what's been an ongoing, really wonderful conversation since 1941. Lots to say about Henry David. All right. So let me start. My name is John Cusick. I'm the co-president with my colleague Court Booth, who's here somewhere, and of course wants to pop in and say hello of the Thoreau Alliance. Are you with us, Court? I
I,
thought I
I
saw you.
am a very
There you
quick
are.
hello. Hi, John.
Excellent.
Hi, everybody.
Very good. Thanks for coming. And I'm really just hosting this, but I do want to thinking I was going to have people introduce themselves really briefly, but there's a lot of us here, so that might take up too much time to have everyone say hello and offer a quick burning question. Let me say, use the chat, and if you have a burning question, please post it in the chat. I'll be checking it and make sure our moderators and presenters get a chance to explain what they need to say. And let me just say that we're all in the same boat. We're all coming to a really wonderful gathering, having a chance to share what we love and ask the good questions and engage in conversation about Thoreau and his life and legacy in our world today on the topic of health. And our session today is really there just to make sure that we come ready to just have the conversation and not worrying about the details and the mechanics and the time limits and stuff like that. So if we can get those things squared away, then I think we'll have a chance just to come in and have a great conversation. So that's our goal for today. We have two board members who are going to take us through the um, the kind of rules of the game here, and both Christy and Mark Sturgis, who are there. I mean, you can wave your hands, Christy and Mark. We're on the annual gathering committee, so they got to read with me and a couple other folks all of your really wonderful proposals, and got a chance to put them together into really good sessions. And we're hoping that the conversations we imagined back in December and January are as good as even better than we imagined. So that's our hope here. And we will not take more than an hour, I promise that. And if you have other follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to ask. So I'm going to stop talking at you. I'll turn things over to Mark and Christy, and I think Mark is going to share a PowerPoint just to kind of give a little structure and visuals to the presentation. And that shouldn't take more than 15 minutes or so to go through this, maybe a bit more, and then we can have a chance to take any questions you may have. All right. Um,
Right. So I will share in a second here. I'll just introduce myself first. Mark Sturgis. I'm at St. Lawrence University. I've been coming to the annual gatherings for maybe 5 or 6 years and am a recent, I think, addition to the board as of last year. And I guess our purpose here with this presentation is to provide anyone maybe who's a newcomer. So we might start with some very basic stuff, like just how the AG works, and give some tips about creating presentations and how to upload those and how that's going to work. So I'll let Christy introduce herself, and then I will share the screen and we will kind of run through a few slides that have some concrete pointers, I hope. And then, like John said, we'll take some questions.
Hi, I'm Christy Ellis. I'm Associate Professor of English and Environmental Studies at the University of Mississippi. And like Mark, this is my first year, starting my second year on the board. So I'm also a newcomer on the board, but have been coming to the annual gathering for a number of years.
Awesome. Now I will try to remember how to share my screen.
There you go.
Bringing me back to
got it.
Pandemic teaching times. There we go. Okay, so we can also probably make this little PowerPoint presentation available to people at some point. If
Yes, we definitely
you
can.
could email me or John or Christy, and so this has some tips about designing your presentation, and we'll talk a little bit for some of you who are maybe new to a kind of academic presentation format about some tips, tricks, pointers. And there's a link to a Google Doc too that Paul made that has a lot of concrete details about how to upload your slides. So I'll advance to the next slide and let Christy talk for a minute or so.
Sure. So, if this is your first time at the annual gathering, we thought it might be helpful just to know what kind of audience you're looking at. The Thoreau Society members, I remember being really nervous for my first the Thoreau Society annual gathering. It's a really welcoming and supportive community. You have a whole bunch of people who are eager to meet new faces. So I think it's good to know going in that if you don't know anyone, you're welcome to sort of step up and introduce yourself. It's a really sort of inviting place. It's also a knowledgeable group. So if you are looking at a paper that stubbornly wants to be too long, you can remember that you probably don't have to go back over common facts because these are people, many of them have been coming several years and know a lot about Thoreau. So you can jump right into the good stuff. What is the burning message you come to talk about? And yes, I see the last bullet point here is gregarious. They are a talkative bunch. They love sharing what they know. They want to know what you know. So again, there are going to be some opportunities at the annual gathering. Lunches where it's sort of free seating at tables and just don't. I'm a shy person. I tended to sort of try to wander off to a quiet corner. But I think you get the most out of it by just sitting down and introducing yourself. So feel welcome to start up a conversation or enter a conversation.
I'll add that I think my first AG, I was especially self-conscious about how to pronounce Thoreau, or Thoreau's last name. My experience was I didn't get corrected that much, although people do have a variety of pronunciations and some, have particular reasons for pronouncing it a certain ways. But don't be too self-conscious about how you say it. I'll say that. And then, Christy, you want to take this slide too and just talk a little bit about how our panels are going to work?
Sure. Yeah. If you have presented on academic panels before, this will be familiar. But you'll be part of a panel. You'll see on the program who your co-panelists are. Usually, your chair of your panel will reach out to you with an email a few weeks beforehand, asking for a bio, just a sort of brief, I don't know, like 50 to 100 words, maybe 2, 3 sentences bio, so that they can introduce you. So you'll sit usually in the order that you appear in the program, and you'll usually present in the order you appear in the program. The moderator or the chair of the panel will introduce each of you, and then you'll go up, stand in front of a microphone. You can take time to adjust it and make sure people can hear you. Typically, people will read their paper, or they will have, sort of notes and speak from notes. Yeah, you'll go through. Everyone will read or present their presentation, and then there will be time for Q&A at the end. And I will say the Q&A is often the most fun part of these panels and the AG. So Mark will talk about timing, but that's one of the reasons why we try to be pretty disciplined about sticking to the amount of time that each panelist is afforded, because you don't want to squeeze out your Q&A. That's the most sort of valuable time you'll get, is getting sort of questions, thoughts, feedback on your work. Great. What am I missing, Mark? Anything else I should say about that?
No, I think that's good, except this picture is one of the spaces where most of the panels will happen at the Trinity Church, right? So you can kind of see there will be a podium with a microphone. I think this is from Camille Dungy's keynote address. And then there's a screen, right? And we'll talk a little bit about slideshows if you want to use one in a second. And I'll just advance the slide too, as Christy was saying. And I think it's probably still mostly standard practice at humanities academic conferences that people read from a manuscript, but this is, strictly speaking, not required and not necessarily the best, depending upon your comfort with public speaking and how much you're going to practice a presentation. The benefit of reading from a manuscript, typing up, say, a 6-page paper that's going to take you 14 minutes to read, is that you'll stay on time, right? And then you can also share that with people afterwards. Other people will design slides with talking points. Some people might just, use an outline or some note cards or something. I would highly discourage just winging it and expecting to keep at 15 minutes. If I were to do that, I'd probably end up going way over time. But we've experimented with like a variety of different panels over the last couple of years. Like like panels with lots of people on them with like really short time limits, and then some longer panels. This year we've gone to a more standard kind of format, like getting a lot of feedback that sometimes time was an issue, right? People were speaking for quite a while. So this year the goal, correct me if I'm wrong, John, is for everyone to have 15 minutes, besides, I guess, our keynote speakers, right? And so if you imagine you're on a panel with 3 or 4 people, if you've got 3 people and they stick to that 15-minute time slot and there's an hour allotted, that gives a nice robust 15 minutes for a Q&A, right? So this is like a point of enabling that Q&A, right? So each panel is going to have a moderator, and this line here says they'll strictly enforce time limits. Some are more strict than others, right? But most of them are going to give you a 1 or 2 minute warning to let you know when you're coming to the end of your allotted time. You're also welcome to like bring a smartphone to the podium and time yourself. But I think this year's AG, we really want to try to, because it is a standard amount of time, we want to try to as a point of professionalism and equity, try to stick to those time limits. So I guess what's really key is spending some time practicing. Maybe that's just obvious, but spending some time practicing ahead of the AG to see if you're on time. So that's like in red. And then in addition, I guess one other thing to mention is the slideshows. Maybe some of you are here because you're wondering, what if I want to make a PowerPoint? It's, like I said, not required. I don't know. It's like kind of a mixed bag. It might be 50-50 in terms of the people who actually choose to do it. I'm kind of having experienced enough, as I'm showing my screen, having experienced enough death by PowerPoint, and I've kind of tried to move away from it myself. But I think if you do follow some simple rules of thumb, you can probably come up with a more effective presentation visual aid, if that's what you want to do. So a couple of tips here. One is what's going to actually happen, which might be different than at other conferences people have been to or other presentations, is we're going to ask you to submit your slides ahead of time, and then the AG organizers are going to compile them all into one long slideshow that an IT tech expert is going to actually control during the presentation and advance the slides for you. And you'll give them a kind of head nod. So you won't have total design control of your slides. And we're asking you to use a very basic format in like Google Slides or Microsoft PowerPoint. Once you submit those, once you email those in, they're going to be standardized into a Google Slides format. And so if you have some fancy font or some other kind of design feature, some of those things could be lost, right? And I think that's one way you want to keep it really simple. So keep that in mind. Another sort of rule of thumb is to have a title slide with your name and presentation title if you're going to make slides. That will at least give that organizer a sense of when the first 5 or 6 slides are done and the next person's begin. Use large text. We have, I think it's fair to say, and I think a lot of people wear eyeglasses in the audience at the AG. If you try to cram a lot of tiny text on the screen, there's also a lot of great natural light in that place. And so the slides aren't that easy to see. So use really big text. And finally, I'd say limit the total number of slides. And I think Paul had on his Google Doc a rule of thumb, 12 slides max for a 15-minute presentation. Even that might be pushing it. It kind of depends on how you're going to advance through them. So I'll say one more thing about slide stuff. So let's say you choose to be one of the 50% of people who are going to make some slides. As I was mentioning, to avoid technical challenges and streamline sessions and avoid all of that kind of like plugging in a thumb drive, trying to get different people's laptops to connect, we're just going to have you submit them ahead of time. So there's a deadline, July 1st, which is easy to remember. And then there's a Google Doc that if you haven't received it via email yet, expect to see an email from the annual gathering from the Thoreau Society with a Google Doc with some instructions on sharing slides. And that's going to look, if I can hop over here. Going to look like this. Or can I? Stop share. All right, I'm going to stop share. I'm going to show you what that Google Doc looks like, and I'll mention just a couple things from that. Let's see. There it is. Bear with me. Can we see that? Good. So you'll see this. It's a little bit more detailed. This Google Doc, when you receive it, I'm not going to read it at you right now. It's going to give you some more tips and guidelines on how to create your slides, things to avoid. Thinking about if there's a long quotation, maybe you don't need the entire thing on a slide. But if you are doing a lot of analysis of one particular passage, and you want to draw attention to it, maybe that's a good idea to make a slide for that particular purpose. But then there's a thing at the very end that's going to give you the details about how to share or how to email in your slides, right? So I'm going to pop back over to our little slideshow thing. I'm getting back into my Zoom groove. Oh, I think that's really kind of it. And we were just going to say, we'll take some questions. I guess I'll stop the share at this point. But before we take some questions, I also just have up here the website. Take a look at the annual gathering website. And also you can email Rebecca at the info@thoroughAlliance.org if you have any other questions that we can't answer for you about how the panels are going to work or how slides should be uploaded or something like that. Okay. All right. John, Christy, you want to add anything? Or Paul, I know you're here too. You made that Google Doc.
I'll say that slideshow, which is going to be available somehow afterwards, includes several other slides that Mark helpfully put together. If you're new to public speaking in an academic setting, they've got some great tips. So if you're feeling anxious about that, check out the slideshow. The slides we're not showing you will have some advice on that. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
So at this point, feel free to raise a hand or in the chat if you have any questions or even concerns or comments if you've attended. And I know I see familiar names here if you've attended a lot of AGs. And there's one thing that I remembered that I think I had on my public speaking tips slide that I didn't show near the end of that PowerPoint presentation. There will be a microphone. We hope that it's working, right? In past years, that microphone has been a little wonky. Sometimes you've had to speak very close into the microphone, but a lot of people are kind of like, I got a loud voice. People can hear me. I'm going to reject the microphone. From an accessibility standpoint, it's preferable that you don't reject the microphone if it's there to be used, right? If there's one that you can use, try to use it, right? Hopefully it's functioning, and don't try to just kind of go rogue and be like, I have a loud voice, because I think there are probably a lot of people who wear hearing aids that attend the AG too. And they may be trying to adjust those and they may have them so they can pick up what's spoken out of the speakers, but they can't really hear with acoustics in that room from a long distance. So please try to do that if you can. All right, so back to other questions before I keep talking.
Well, Mark.
Go ahead, Don.
Yeah,
Hi, Don.
just a quick comment. Speed at which you talk. Don't try to really rush through it. I remember one speaker who actually said he had 7 minutes for his presentation, and he said, well, my presentation is 15 minutes, and I am going to include everything. And he rushed through that so quickly that at the end, there was stunned silence and there were no questions because people really had lost it, had lost the concentration. So just try to remember to not to rush through your presentation.
No, thank you for that, Don. Absolutely true.
I see Beth has a question about images of manuscripts and the possibility of having a pointer. So I think we'll be in a place with a screen. If you have a pointer that you want to use to highlight things, that might be the easiest rather than trying to do a very sophisticated animation feature on the slides. Although I'd say you can always ask Paul or um, Rebecca if those features are going to make it into the final episode. So if you do have some kind of special features, be in touch. I think the issue Paul can speak more about this if when you're customizing into the Google Slides format, how much gets lost in PowerPoint. A
I think
pointer's fine.
the issue I have in mind is that not all pointers work with all screens.
Oh, I
And
see.
I wonder if you know what kind animation is, Paul knows this, animation is not under question here.
Okay.
But do you know what kind of pointers? Laser
Uh,
pointers don't work with some of the screens that
it,
are used now. So I don't
it,
know the kind of
oh,
screen you
okay.
have.
That's a great question. I don't know the answer offhand. We're not projecting onto like a smart board
Right.
display thing. We're projecting onto basically a movie screen, which I think would be fine for a laser pointer, but that's just a guess. So let me double check on that. That'd be helpful.
I can email Rebecca about
Okay,
that
yeah, and
if
I can
that
ask
would
that too.
be helpful.
I will say that
Um,
we after some rocky tech support last year, we've invested in some professional tech support,
oh,
so
that's excellent to know.
everything should be much more smooth this year. I think we were um, expected to be easier, and it was not easier last year than it was. So we've invested some of our money into making sure we have some really good crackerjack people who are going to make
Good.
sure things are running smoothly. So I think that won't be an issue.
Rebecca also suggested that I bring hard copies. As she said, some people like to hold pieces of paper. Can you suggest how many
That is a great
copies
question.
would be possibly needed? What's the capacity of
Yeah.
the room?
Um, so the capacity of the room is going to be probably 70, 80 people. I think we can probably expect maybe 25 or 30 each hand. So I think one of the accessibility issues is that some people like to have hard copy. It's easier to handle. They can read it better.
Yep.
And so it's nice. And some people have suggested like bring a few copies of your slides and a couple copies of your paper if you want to make those available to people who might want them. Other people are just really loath to print out more paper. And so I think we've not made it a prescriptive requirement. But if you do want to bring copies, um, I wouldn't plan on bringing more than 25 if you want to give everyone a chance to see it and to have a or look on with somebody's else. If you do want to bring some extra copies for people who might be really appreciating a hard copy, I think
Okay.
three or four or five is probably enough. I wouldn't expect more people than that to actually have a need for it, but
Okay.
nice to have it available.
Thanks.
Does that make sense, Mark and Christy? I'm just
Yeah,
trying to remember.
I'll add, I think there might have been one year, or I might be thinking of a different conference where we asked people to bring accessible copies, right? Again,
Mhm.
for people who may have a difficulty hearing and, sometimes even printing them a little bit larger in 14 or 15 size font. I've seen that happen a lot, and I don't think more than 3 or 4 ever get taken, right, from the audience, just anecdotally speaking. So I wouldn't go overboard printing too many copies of accessible paper copies. Yeah.
Well, there aren't going to be words on these pieces of paper. These are images of
Yeah.
manuscripts. So sometimes people like to look for
Mhm.
themselves rather than
Yeah.
be watching a screen far away.
I
Yeah,
think
for sure.
I think a good idea would be if you're thinking of it in accessibility terms, let people know that, and then 20, 25 copies is enough. But if it's a handout, people are going to, in my experience, people want the hard copy. They like the hard copy. And then you might want to have, two people can share, but I think 25 won't be enough for everyone in an 80-person room to get their hands on it. So if you want to limit it to just people who need it for accessibility, make an announcement before you hand it out. Otherwise, the first 2 rows will get it and no one else will.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah. And I was speaking, I think, in terms of accessible copies, like sometimes people will have the whole text of their whole presentation as an accessible copy, but a handout is a different thing. You'd want more copies of that for sure.
Mhm.
I think Beverly had her hand up.
Yep. Thank you. Go ahead, Beverly.
Hi, yeah, no, I was just going to say that from experience, you'll probably have a lot of handouts left over. People will not, but everybody else has already said that. I think for accessibility purposes, again, have it with larger print for people who might want to see, you know, um, I think the most I've ever had is 3 or 4 copies that I've given out, and I've always taken more back than I brought. So, but you all covered that. That's why I put my hand down.
No worries. Thank you. Great.
There's a question in the chat, which might be for you, John. I don't know about the policy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. JH. Oh, so people can people come to a single session? Um, Let me just say, let's have that conversation with Rebecca. I think so. The balancing act is always want to make sure as many people come to these as we'd like, but we also need to pay the rent on the space, pay our tech people, and so we want to make sure that people who are coming to the conference, chip in appropriately. But we want to make sure that people who have a special interest or are facing kind of other kinds of challenges are invited and not don't see the cost as a barrier. So um, Saturday is always wide open.
Yeah.
That's our open day for anybody to come in for our keynote, for some of the marquee discussions that are there. And I think on the other ones, let's have those conversations on a case by case basis, because I think we're happy to extend invitations to a few people for a good reason. But we don't want to say a blanket, you can come and go as you please. I think what we've done in the past is say, for the session, sure, come in. And if you want to make a contribution, we'd welcome that. But we don't want to just say show up or not as you please. And then payment becomes strictly optional. And then we can't pay our bills and we can't
Sure.
have this great conference. Does that sound fair? So
Yeah,
I would say,
that
yeah.
yeah. So talking to Rebecca would be the right way to address that.
If you can shoot an email to me or Rebecca, and I'll get it to Rebecca. I mean, I think we're always trying to balance off. We want to make sure that as many people have access to the great stuff folks are bringing as possible. We also want to make sure we can keep doing this at the level we really like to do. And so that's the challenge we have to balance. And
Great.
so,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Excellent. We do tend to invite a number of people and to say, come check out this one thing, if you'd like, or come for this one day. But we want to make that a bit more discreet and not broadly broadcast, except for the Saturday sessions, which we say, like, if anyone wants to check out the annual gathering and just get a sense of what the flavor is, come that day, and then maybe come for the full session next year. Great. Thanks, Jacob. Great
Thank you.
question. I'll say, of course, that people's materials, their slides are theirs and theirs alone. They get to share them. They get with anybody they want. That's all good. And we also make recordings of, I think, most or all of the sessions available after the fact on our YouTube channel. So people who really want to catch a particular panel or a particular talk will have access to it once we have a chance to process all the recordings. All right. Other questions? You're all here. I hate to take away more precious minutes from your Sunday afternoons, but I also don't want to have anybody leave with a question they've not asked. So we'll give it another moment. All right. Why don't we then say that if you have other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, to Rebecca. You now know Mark and Christy, so you can certainly track them down and ask them questions. And we'll be in touch with some follow-up information, particularly about the PowerPoint um, issues. And if you have questions about the details of those, like will this animation make it? Like, are these, will the conversions from PowerPoint to Google Slides mess things up? We can certainly answer those questions on a one-by-one basis. But let me just say again, the annual gathering is like nothing else in the kind of world we play in. It's both a really incredibly stimulating and high-powered academic conference. Some of the really world-renowned Thoreau experts are here, people who will be happy to talk about any little nuance of Thoreauviana you can find, and also people who are coming at Thoreau for the first time from very different angles, and who are most definitely not academics and specialists. And that's why it's so awesome, because we get to talk to a wide swath of people. Um, those of us who've been in the game for a while love nothing more than to welcome new people in and to find out what's of interest to people who are coming at it from a different world, or people who are living Thoreauvian questions in their daily lives, how it plays. And we're also happy to kind of explain details and nuance and context to anybody who wants to listen to us. It's a great gathering, and we tried also to balance off having great presentations and panels, but also other really exciting things to do. And this year, of course, we have the Ewers Brother documentary, which we're going to feature over several nights and with a great conversation. Also, other excursions and chances to gather and just be social and to have the conversations that go off in all different kinds of directions. So, thank you for being here today, and thank you for bringing your energy, your interest, your enthusiasm, your expertise, and your wide range of knowledge to what's going to be a really great chance to gather in Concord. So we're very excited to see you, and we'll be in touch a lot more as you come along. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Christy. Thank you, Paul, for the infrastructure and for leading us through this conversation today. We'll see you soon.
Thanks,
Thank
John.
you. Thank you. Sarah, Alyssa, good to see you. All right. Are we good? All right. Um, Christy and Mark, thank you so much.
Sure.
Alyssa, nice to see you. Alyssa is one of our fellowship winners, so excited to see you here.
Congrats.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Right.
Um, Great. Thank you, guys.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Uh,
All
See
right.
you guys
Take
soon.
care. Yep.
yeah, see you on the screen, I guess, this summer
Uh,
on
you
that Monday, right? I'll zoom in on that Monday. So, all right.
well, sounds like you have a heck of a summer in front of you, Mark, and I'm glad you're making the most of it. That's great.
I
John, do
am
we
going to
have
get to, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to ask about is it Monday and Tuesday, the board meeting, or
Just
Monday?
Monday.
Just
Just
Monday.
Monday.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I
Great.
think that with the quarterly meetings, we feel like we don't need to do 2 days, but we'll see. But
Great.
yeah,
Cool.
it's excellent.
I was going to tell you, John, I am going to get to New York next week briefly. I have one day in the Morgan Library, so I will
Oh,
take a
good.
look at the Indian notebooks.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
on display, and I'm in touch with Sal Robinson about a scheme to. Well, I have a kind of essay and draft that we're trying to. Paul wants to put it up on the digital Thorough, and I might try to get it published somewhere. So I need to get better images, but I also want to do a digital project that has students involved in basically making a digital guide to the Indian notebooks, where we would pull together topics and links to the sources he's using and having a chance to look at it in lots of different kinds of ways. And so that's in process. And I'll when it's starting to take shape, but I'll send out an email to people I know are thinking about the Indian notebooks. I know you are. I know there's one of our um, fellowship awardees this year is new and thinking about it. I know that um, Lydia Wilski Chilla is thinking about these kind of things. So we'll get the word out and
Do
see
you
how we
know
can.
about the partial transcripts that were made of the Indian notebooks by
Yeah,
someone who
so
recommended?
so so they're there, and the Morgan has all but one, which they lost along the way. But Paul, particularly, and Beth Witherall have kind of tracked down. Turns out Columbia University. So these are all the grad students in Columbia who made the transcripts in the 30s, and then gave their rough drafts of transcripts to the Morgan, who have posted PDFs. And the finished versions are at Columbia, which is kind of cool. Like they're cleaner, they're better. And
Hmm.
Columbia was not that interested in making them digitally available when we talked to them a couple of years ago.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
raised copyright issues. Um, but my sense is what we can do is pull together basically a guide that kind of indicates here's what Thoreau wrote in Indian Notebook One, here are the sources he used, here are the topics. So you can actually search these things and get a sense of what he's borrowing from, what he's not borrowing from, and have it kind of be clickable, comparable with the transcripts and the sources he's working from. That's kind of the goal. And I think
Yeah,
I'll
no, that sounds awesome. I mean,
yeah.
just thinking, I've been through using those transcripts and to open all 12, 11 or 12 different PDFs and do a search, keyword search, it's just actually annoying. So to
It's
have one place to do one search, that'd be
they're
great.
they're very hard to search. And even that way, like they're not keyed in any kind of way that's useful and interesting. So I think if so, my sense I can do this over several years and have students from my university kind of do the bulk of the grunt work, but it'd be hopefully be one that we can also welcome people into. And if you have other students who want to jump in, Paul's happy to host it at Digital Thoreau and have some
Cool.
ideas about software and frames for it. So we'll it's cooking. We'll see how it goes.
About 10 years ago, I had a long conversation with Beth because I wanted to make a digitized version of the India notebooks because I was
Ah,
working I was down here, I was working on my book chapter
yeah.
that used them, and I was using like, microfilm, and I like, this is
Oh,
impossible,
nightmare. Yeah.
But I did find that like because a lot of the original sources that Thoreau was reading are
Right.
digitized now in Google Books, like
Yep.
transcripts is
Yep.
much easier because you can just compare the manuscript to like I've got a
Yeah.
line here, so now I know he's reading this, and now you can decipher. So it would be
Cool.
really awesome if they can also give you because one of the things I found was really interesting is that he'd transcribe things and then not transcribe. You find out what he's
Right.
not transcribing if you have the
That's the
original
fascinating
source.
part is what's he skipping
Yeah.
over? Yeah.
Right. What has he turned out not interested in?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Totally agreed. So I think it would not be impossible to do. I think that we had a long series of conversations with the Morgan about trying to get the all the manuscripts digitized in a higher resolution format so you can actually scan them and key them up and the Morgan seems to not have the resources to make that happen, which is kind of frustrating. And of course, all the digital humanities stuff has been drying up. So anyway,
but
I
it's an
think
awesome project. It'll be so great to
but I
have
think
more
but
access to it.
I think we can move it forward with what we have right now and I think some useful ways. So we'll
Awesome.
see.
Cool.
Is your sense then that it is mostly transcription or paraphrasing? Or is
It's
it kind of
I think it's
50-50, or is there a percentage?
I would say it's probably 95% transcription. And there are places where he'll kind of take notes and summarize, and there are places where he'll kind of write some stuff. But
That's interesting because the David Cusick stuff, he seems to paraphrase the majority of that
it's a
short
little bit
text.
of paraphrase, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Huh. Okay.
And like why he decides to paraphrase here and not there, hard to say. You know, like I was looking at some stuff with Champlain, and there's some paraphrases there when he's kind of weaving, any like a little place where he's weaving together and doing some thinking around it. And that'd be a nice thing to key in on. So like, where is he actually not just transcribing, but actually processing it in different kinds of ways would be worth looking.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one of the hardest things too, is like where I want his, there are only a few really annotative or discursive, like thorough, writing in his
Right.
own voice. And it'd be really nice to be
Right.
able to like
Yeah.
do those.
Well, and if we have that, then what you end up with is this incredible digital library of what, if you were an interested reader in 19th century America, like what would you learn about Native people,
Yeah.
which is also kind of interesting. And you can like search it for who's writing about the Iroquois, who's writing about the Lenape, who's writing about sexual Moors, who's writing about plants, who's writing about, I'll key it up in different kinds of ways. It'd be cool. Anyway.
Well, I wanted to share, not to keep you too long, because I'm not going to get it to the AG, so I don't have time to geek out with you guys this summer. But so I know you've done the work with the George Copway
Hmm.
book that Thoreau owned, and then I was talking to you, we exchanged an email about Red Jacket. The Copway connection that I came across, I don't know if you're aware of it. When he was in Buffalo in 1851 or two to lecture, he found out that Red Jacket was buried at a dilapidated cemetery that had been neglected because the Senecas lost Buffalo Creek in 1838. Copway went down there with an undertaker and he dug up Red Jacket and they took it back to someone's house. He took his bones back to someone's house and they had him in the basement. And a bunch of Seneca people who were descendants and relatives of Red Jacket showed up and demanded the bones back. And then they stored those away for 30 years. And then the thing I was looking into was when Red Jacket was reburied at Forest Lawn Cemetery in the 1880s. But I thought that was just a fascinating moment of Copway, on his like native history lecture tour, decides to dig
Yeah.
up somebody. It's like that just has a
What the heck? Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So,
He's a weird character. He's fascinating. Yeah. Like he just um you get the sense of somebody who's unmoored, and so you kind of figure out these new ways of being over and over again. And some of them are kind of cool, and some of them are just absolutely like just cringy. Yeah. Um, they're people you don't always behave how you want them to behave, which is kind of
Yeah,
kind of what people do, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, there's plenty of white anthropologists digging up people left and right all throughout,
Yeah.
early
Yep.
America. But
Yeah.
interesting to see Copway getting in on the game.
Well, and
But
the whole Copway and the Native American Know Nothing movement is kind of fascinating. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
But
and I don't know much about the one that the person who came to Concord, Mungdwagus, who was not on Ojibwe also on the circuit, who Thoreau talked to and wrote some notes about in a journal. But another person who kind of traveled really far and wide, trading on Indian knowledge. Um, I don't think he wrote the way that Copway wrote, so I don't have as much from him. And I do think like his Copway's traditional history is pretty good. Like it feels like he's thorough, he's even keeled, comprehensive. I think he's not as revered among the Ojibwe because he had such a weird trajectory, but
yeah,
it's a neat text. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
Very
All right.
cool.
Well, thanks.
All right. Well,
Yeah,
always fun to geek out. And
yeah.
Christy, well, keeping the loop about the Indian notebook stuff. So you were looking at manuscripts that the actual physical
Yeah, I
manuscript?
have like no, I had microfiche. I was stuck in Mississippi, so I had
Yeah.
the like microfiche I bought from the Morgan. They had microfiche
Oh,
that I could
right.
then
Okay. Yeah. And,
that's how I was
yeah,
that.
they don't have one of the transcriptions. So I bought the like Indian Notebook 9 or 10, whatever it was, digitized. And I thought I'd have to then spend my time transcribing it. But it turns out the missing version is something that Robert Sayer had picked up in 1970s and then copied and brought to Iowa, which is where Beth and Paul found it. Um, so that spared me that exercise. But yeah, no, his handwriting sucks. No
Yeah.
question about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those
I
those
was only
poor
working with the last three. I was like, I'm not this is slow enough.
yeah, those poor women who had to kind of do all that print. Anyway, there it is. Very good. Thank you guys.
All right. Thanks, John.
We'll
See
be in
ya.
touch.
See you,
Take care.
Christy.